Hey, Grace Church, Michael Campbell here, family pastor, going over this Sunday's lesson and how it applies to the children, how it applies to us as primary disciple makers in our home. So we're actually going backwards this week, where we're talking about Jesus is our perfect prophet, specifically from Deuteronomy chapter 18. So in this week's passage from Deuteronomy, Moses spoke to the Israelites about the prophet that God had promised to the Israelites to raise up among them. Unlike the imperfect Moses, his successor would prove to be an even greater and better than himself. So like this coming prophet would be the ultimate fulfillment of God's promises of old. And only Jesus could be the one whose perfect word would faithfully and flawlessly come to pass. And prophets served as like watchdogs or mouthpieces between God and his people. And through sharing the word of the Lord, they made God's truth known among his people. And what separated Jesus from Moses and the rest of the prophets, though, was that he alone could actually save and redeems God's people from that sin. So God used the prophets of the Old Testament to continually point his people to the coming Messiah, who alone is the only way to the Father. And how did Jesus fit the criteria of the final prophet? How could they actually be sure? And Moses spoke of a prophet worth heeding and obeying, one whose words that would truly come from the Father. Unlike the false gods and teachers who echoed off of meaningless deception, Christ's resurrection proved him to be the perfect promise prophet of God. And Moses instructed the Israelites to wait expectantly for the prophet who spoke God's truth in all of its fullness. He instructed them to watch for a divine message to be fulfilled that can only come from God himself. And when it came to fruition, they can know that it's actually the truth. In his own perfect timing, God sent Jesus to the world to save us from sin. And the ultimate fulfillment of Moses' instructions came through Christ's death and resurrection. He not only declared victory over sin and death, but enacted his triumph on our behalf. So as we talk to our children, classrooms, or even within our homes this week, help us and help them all understand that Jesus spoke like he has and he will continue to come to pass, just as Moses prophesied. Like teach them that Jesus did more than simply speak God's truth. He lived it out and fulfilled its requirements so that by faith, we could also be brought back into a right relationship with God. So big topics, but again, all of Scripture is breathed out by God and all pointing to God himself, Christ. And so you'll notice in the rest of the thread some discussion points, memory verses, topics to go through as a family as well. But until next week, God bless and take care.